And that is the mantra for the t-shirt slogan for this week's video. It's an interesting date today in music history research. It is Sunday the 16th of August, and the 16th of August just happens to be Madonna's birthday. So she turns 62 today, and she's still out there pushing control system agendas just the same as she was back in the 80s. It's also the date on which we were told Elvis Presley, Robert Johnson and Aretha Franklin all passed away. So Elvis Presley was known as the King of Rock, Robert Johnson known as the King of Blues, and Aretha Franklin was known as the Queen of Soul, and they all happened to die on the 16th of August in various different years, interestingly enough. So no video yesterday. I was at a protest demo event in Birmingham, UK. More of that shortly. No video last weekend either because I was away with my family catching a bit of holiday time in Northern Ireland. It was a great experience. We opted to stay within the UK because of all the nonsense restrictions involving quarantine and isolation and stuff. These seem to change by the day. We got the announcement this week that people returning from France are going to have to isolate for 14 days. That joins the rules and regulations for Spain and various other countries. So we decided to play it safe and just visit Northern Ireland. Had a wonderful time. It's a beautiful part of the world. Had some great drives. The coastal road between Ballycastle and Larne is one of the most picturesque and scenic that I've seen anywhere. And we really enjoyed ourselves. We were self-catering in a cottage in a village called Cushenden, which is right out in the middle of nowhere, coastal, surrounded by a beautiful National Trust parkland. And the most refreshing thing, besides catching a bit of quality family time for ourselves, was a fairly relaxed attitude towards mask wearing and social distancing by the crowds in Northern Ireland. So technically people are supposed to observe this social distancing nonsense. Social distancing, as I've said, is an oxymoron. Nothing social about it, that's the whole point. But you got the signs everywhere, you got the bits of tape, you got the one-way systems in stores. Happily, a lot of people just seem to be ignoring that and just behaving in a normal way. Halfway through our visit on Monday the 15th of August, masks were made supposedly mandatory by the Northern Ireland government in shops and supermarkets, same way as in England. So people were supposed to be observing this from that date, but happily many people clearly were not. So I was going into shops and finding many people just walking in and behaving normally, which was an encouraging sign because in England people have been meekly, obediently complying with the mask rules, and we're going to get some more into the whole issue of masks as we continue in this video. So clearly lots of things have happened since I last posted an update 2 weeks ago. When it comes to stuff happening with Donald Trump in the United States, there's been no shortage of that in recent days. Most interestingly, a few days ago, Trump gave a press conference at a Whirlpool washing machine manufacturing plant in Ohio. He was flanked in the background by 17 washing machines in boxes. What's the 17th letter of the alphabet? That would be Q. Am I buying in to the whole Q narrative? Do I feel there's validity to it? And why am I mentioning it in this video? Well, I'm a researcher and I keep a close eye on truth, alternative, conspiracy type issues which are being discussed. And if you are a researcher in this realm, you can't ignore the fact that many people are talking about this Q plan, the Q group, supposedly working in conjunction with Donald Trump to bring down the deep state cabal from the inside, to arrest criminals, paedophiles, child trafficking gangs, to expose the horrific crimes against humanity and specifically crimes against children that are said to have been committed by the elite class and many household famous names, politicians, Hollywood actors, business leaders, all the rest of it. That's the basis of what the Q plan is said to consist of. The problem with it is, because it's covert and operates by stealth, by its very nature, there is very little or nothing by way of documentation, proofs and evidence to be able to verify the claims that are made about it. By its very nature, so much of it is down to trust and faith, and we get the slogan, trust the plan. I do have some difficulty with trusting anything when there's no proof or evidence to back it up. no matter how much I would like the outcome that's being discussed to be the case. And so it is with Q. So I'm still very much observing from the outside with great interest, hoping that there is indeed validity and truth to what we're being told is going on, but reserving a certain amount of caution. So there was a lot of symbolism surrounding this event involving Donald Trump. Interesting that the brand of washing machine that he chose to base himself at for this event, interesting that he would be at a washing machine manufacturing plant in the first place, right? But Whirlpool, when you think of a whirlpool, does it make you think of water disappearing down a sink maybe? Or perhaps draining a swamp? That familiar phrase, which has been a part of Trump's campaign and is very much tied into what we're told about the Q group. Draining the swamp, ridding the system of these criminal elements and flushing them out once and for all. We're all waiting for the arrest of Hillary and Bill Clinton, right? We're all hoping and praying that Bill Gates gets put where he rightfully belongs. I would throw Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock into that mix as well, and Anthony Fauci and George Soros can go the same way as far as I'm concerned. Are we going to see that? I've no idea. But I'm not necessarily throwing the whole thing out because something is going on. It could well be an elaborate psyop to disempower us and lead us off down the garden path. I can't discount that. But we need to look and consider some of the things that Donald Trump has been involved with in recent days. So he makes this press conference at the Whirlpool plant, and he speaks of making pharmaceutical medication far more affordable for Americans, keeping it within America, cutting out overseas supply lines, and therefore depriving many middlemen and particular agencies and individuals of the huge profits that they've been making off the back of this industry. And he says that this inevitably is going to make him a lot of very powerful enemies that are going to be rather pissed off with him. And he says at the end of this speech that you might not be seeing me for a while after this, which indicates that he feels his life could well be in danger, and he could well have made himself a very real target for assassination through pissing off certain powerful parties. Let's just take a listen to what he had to say at this point.
They are so wealthy, nobody has any idea who the hell they are, what they do. They make more money than the drug companies. You know, in all fairness, at least the drug companies have to produce a product, and it has to be a good product. But the middlemen, well, the rebate that I'm doing cuts out the middlemen and it reduces costs, and the money goes back to the people purchasing the drugs. So I have a lot of enemies out there. This may be the last time you'll see me for a while. A lot of very, very rich enemies, but they are not happy with what I'm doing. But I figure we have one chance to do it, and no other president's going to do what I do. No other president would do a favored nations, a rebate, a buy from other nations at much less cost. Nobody. And there are a lot of unhappy people, and they're very rich people, and they're very unhappy. Here's my fourth promise to American workers.
You notice Trump has a very golden hue about him in that video, almost as if he's had gold lacquer applied to his face or something like that. Surely some symbolism there to the gold. Shortly after the Ohio event, he's said to have been taken to Bedminster, New Jersey, to his residence there, where he gave another press conference, and observers of this one have found it interesting that in the footage that's been made available, it focuses in on Trump standing up at the lectern, but you don't see evidence of anyone else in the room. You hear it because you hear reporters' voices, or what purports to be reporters in the room asking him questions, which he answers, but you don't see any visual evidence of them being there. And this has led some researchers to speculate on whether this was a staged event, possibly using a green screen to give the impression that there were reporters in the room. What's led many to this conclusion is that shortly before Trump left for the Ohio event, the entire White House staff came out onto the lawn and saw him off, waved him goodbye. as he departed, and all the windows in the White House were seen to have green shutters behind them. And many feel that this could be symbolism pertaining to a green screen being used on certain events where we're now going to see Trump from this point going forward. So in Ohio, he did say that you might not be seeing me again for some time, leading many to speculate that he might be out of the spotlight for a few days or weeks. But within just a few days, he was back giving another press conference, and this time it was interrupted midway through by a Secret Service guy who came up to Trump and evidently said, "Could you come with me, please, sir?" And Trump looked, kind of shocked, didn't know what was going on, went off with the Secret Service guy. He re-emerged sometime later to address the reporters, to address the crowd once again, and he pointed out that he'd been advised by his security, Secret Service, that there had been a gunman outside the White House, just outside the perimeter of the premises, who had been shot by security because evidently they felt that he was posing a threat. Trump says he doesn't know whether this person might have been after him or whether it was something entirely related, but he was taken out, he was shot, and that threat was removed. So kind of interesting that immediately after him talking about having some very powerful enemies, we hear of a gunman outside the perimeter of the White House. So we're left wondering what the situation is with regard to the so-called Q plan. Is stuff really happening behind the scenes, which is going to turn out to be positive for humanity in the long run, but is going to prove to be very shocking and very difficult to deal with for the vast majority of the general public, who are completely unprepared for revelations of the kind that are said to be coming in terms of child sex trafficking, the absolute mind-boggling scale of pedophilia and abuse and the adrenochrome industry and all of this. Or is the whole thing just one big hoax and one big ruse? I don't know. I don't think anyone outside of that immediate circle really knows, to be honest with you. We can speculate, we can have opinions, and God knows everyone does, but I continue to keep a close eye on the whole situation. It is said to be tied in with what is happening in Australia and New Zealand at the moment. Melbourne and Auckland are currently under absolutely horrendous draconian lockdown restrictions from what I hear. Melbourne has been for several weeks. Auckland got placed into lockdown by the treacherous traitor Jacinda Ardern just the other day on the basis of 4 new cases emerging in the country. That apparently justified locking down the entire city of Auckland, and I believe that's being extended to other parts of New Zealand. So I really do feel for people in those parts of the world, because they're really getting put through it right now. Must be very scary, it must be very challenging times. And it's long seemed to me that Australia and New Zealand are used as experimental testing grounds for measures that the so-called elites wish to roll out elsewhere, plans that they have for the rest of the world, but they need some experimental guinea pigs to try it out on first of all, to see what the response is going to be and to fine-tune the tactics and the methods. And Australia and New Zealand always seem to fit that bill, unfortunately. The governments of those two nations are among the most corrupt and criminal in the entire world, and they truly need to be brought to justice. They will be brought to justice karmically under the functions of the universe and of creation. We can be sure of that, and they can too, but it would be nice to see them reap some kind of justice in this world for the crimes against humanity that they've committed. So many feel that the lockdowns in Melbourne and Auckland are there as a smokescreen for the clearing up of the underground tunnels that are said to exist beneath these cities and many others around the world. But supposedly the cleanup action has now reached Australia and more recently New Zealand, and these underground tunnel systems and deep underground military bases, which are said to exist beneath these cities where all this horrific activity involving children goes on, are being demolished. Children are being rescued and taken out, and the whole system is just being taken down. Again, I can't possibly know if there is validity to that or not. It would explain a lot if that is what is really going on in terms of why these cities have been locked down, but it still leaves many unanswered questions, such as if the governments of these two countries are so corrupt and so criminal, why would they be complicit? Why would they be cooperating with an operation to destroy these tunnels and take the whole system down? We'll have to keep a close eye on how that one pans out. But there's a very important point to be made here, which is we cannot be sure that this Q plan is real. We cannot be sure that Donald Trump is a good and righteous man working on the side of humanity for the greater good in creation, doing great work, making positive, optimistic things happen, and creating a better future, not just for Americans, but for the rest of the world, should he succeed in getting voted back in November. It'll be very interesting if he loses that election, or if it's rigged to keep him out, or if anything happens to him in the meantime. I certainly hope that doesn't turn out to be the case. But whatever the case, the rest of us cannot rely on this being a thing. We cannot rely on this representing our salvation. We cannot rely on anyone stepping in to save us from the precarious situations that we all find ourselves in. That has to come from us. We have to be that change. We have to represent that power. Nobody's going to do it for us. It is down to us. And that can seem a very frightening prospect when you look at the mind-controlled state in which the vast, overwhelming majority of the general public are still being kept in. Most of them are buying the lies, they're buying the fear-based propaganda, they're believing everything the treacherous mainstream media is telling them about this beastly virus, this pandemic that is threatening everyone's lives, and they're just buying the whole rhetoric. So we clearly have a major job to do, those of us that know better, those of us that have taken the personal responsibility to research the truth of this matter and to face up to the uncomfortable fact that we're being lied to, that the government is tyrants, are tyrants, and they do not have our best interests at heart. This entire agenda is not about a virus, it's about surveillance, control, and the stripping away of our personal rights and freedoms. We have to somehow communicate that to the rest of the general public, and it is down to the small number of us that are already doing this work, unfortunately, to keep it stepped up. We can't rely on anything else getting the job done. It's down to us. In which regard, I'm feeling a little more optimistic and positive about that whole dynamic than I was in the last video that I put out 2 weeks ago. So yesterday, I was up in Birmingham, England, at a Stand Up X protest demo event. A peaceful gathering, but a very forceful one where a good number of people, a few hundred I would say, turned out in Victoria Square and sent a very clear and direct message to anyone that was watching. And the event was flanked by police, as they always are. There were about 4 police vans, a bunch of coppers. Naturally, not social distancing, not a mask in sight, because they know it's all bollocks, let's face it. But they were keeping a close eye on the event. And it was a great gathering. Many people came out to let it be known how they feel about the whole thing. There were some amazing speeches, truly inspirational, truly rousing and uplifting. I'm going to be at the Stand Up X event in Bristol, in Castle Park, on Sunday the 30th of August, where I've been invited to be one of the speakers. And I tell you, the speakers at Birmingham yesterday set the bar very high. And I've got a major job on my hands if I'm going to rival the impact of the talks of yesterday, because they really made a major impression on people that were there. So we had Dr. Muhammad Adil. He really stole the show. I mean, he would have got a standing ovation if people weren't standing up already. So this is the British-based doctor who has come forward as a whistleblower to call bullshit on the whole COVID-19 narrative from a medical scientific perspective. He's done many interviews. He's paid the price for having spoken out, in that his career has been trashed. He's been struck off from the General Medical Council list as a practitioner. I'm going to be interviewing him on Monday, or the day after I record this video, for my Good Vibrations podcast. I've got a whole load of questions to put to him. Many of them have been sent to me by people that want to ask Dr. Adil about various aspects of this. But he put in a great speech yesterday. Gareth Icke was there, David Icke's son. A few speakers I didn't know. There was Andrew Johnson of Check the Evidence. He kicked off the whole thing, did a great job. Piers Corbyn, of course, is always at these events, and he always whips up the crowd, and he always has tremendous power and impact to anything that he says. And I want to play you right now an excerpt from one of the speeches from a lady that was in attendance at Birmingham yesterday. I don't know her name at this point, unfortunately, because I'd had to leave the event by the point she came up to give her talk. But this is amazing stuff. This is a true speech for our times that will go down in history. And she's really making some points that need to be made with amazing impact. And it had a profound effect on the crowd, and it already has on many people that have seen it shared on social media. So let's take a listen to what this wonderful lady had to say about the mask wearing agenda as part of COVID-19. And it's nothing about keeping you safe from a virus. But we knew that, right?
Face coverings turn us into voiceless submissives. They strip us of our personal identity. They remove our smile, our ability to breathe and communicate like a normal, functioning human being. They are a human muzzle and have been used for centuries by tyrants to silence, dehumanize, ridicule, and shame their victims. Just go and research it. The people, so we're talking the government here, and they're paid-off puppets, that you must wear these, and they know that they are bad for your health. Their own scientific and medical advisors have made them aware of this multiple times, including to us, the public, yet people just blindly comply. Why? Because they're scared of getting a fine. That's going to be the least of their worries! Hang on a sec. It's a good job these collaborators didn't fight in the Second World War, otherwise the world could have been full-blown fascist! Some might argue that's exactly where we are headed now! If it is that easy to agree to suffocate under a mask, what is next? An injection, a digital ID under the skin, or the mask wearer is going to shame the people who refuse to have an unknown substance injected into their bloodstream? Approximately 8 million children go missing every single year and are being trafficked into international paedophile rings that are somehow miraculously connected to the people behind this pandemic. These people are everywhere, from royalty, business, teaching, the charity sector, the media and film industry, and politicians. Did you know that UK MPs voted last month to protect the names of MPs who commit these crimes? Did you know that? Why would they want to do that?
And the police department as well.
Absolutely, the police department. It's everywhere. And we are going to stop it! So, I ask you all today, all of you, including the police.
Then from the square, the action moved into the streets of Birmingham by way of a march. And as you'll hear, there were chants of "Take the masks off. The masks are a muzzle." Many a bemused shopper in said masks, looking very confused and not understanding what was going on, but hopefully the message got through to a few of them, and then by the end of it the chants were going up, "Arrest Bill Gates," and I never have a problem with that notion.
Yeah.
Take the masks off! They don't stop viruses! You are being controlled by the government! Take them off! They don't work!
Look at all the science! There is no science for the masks! Check it out! Go on your computers,
Take the
check it out!
mask off!
Take the mask off! Take the mask off!
They don't stop viruses! You are being controlled!
Wake up, Birmingham!
Stop wearing the symbols of your oppression! Take the masks
Off! What you call it? Up!
Take the
Mask off!
They do not stop viruses! The mask is a puzzle, guys, it's a puzzle. It's there to show you damages your health, reduces your oxygen intake, which is what you're designed to breathe in. It maximizes your carbon dioxide intake. You're not meant to breathe that in. That's the trees and plants. Increases your acid in your blood, your pH. Damages your immune system, your white blood cell count, the marrow in your bones goes down.
And again, I apologise, I don't yet know the lady. And again, I apologise, I don't yet know the name. And again, I apologise, I don't yet know the name of the lady doing that speech, but I'm sure many people watching this do, so please drop me a note to advise on that. And I've got to say, the women really are putting the men to shame in this whole situation. I mean, obviously, there are men getting out there, stepping up, doing what needs to be done, but the women really are taking control of this whole situation. When it comes to these protest demo events, many women out there on the front lines giving these incredible speeches, doing activism of all kinds, trying to raise awareness, that they're on social media, they're making videos, they're getting the word out. And I've made the point in a few interviews recently that there seems to be a real lack of authentic, real men in the world at this time, and I really do feel that's down to a great job that's been done on the part of the social engineers in terms of softening up society, and particularly men ready for what was known to be coming. So I'm seeing big hulking strapping men with tattoos, shaven heads, you know, who ordinarily you would expect to be at the front line of resistance against tyranny, standing up for the rights and the freedoms of the rest of the community, representing everyone else by going out there as warriors, fighting for freedom and justice. And I'm seeing very little of that. What I am seeing a lot of is these types of men walking around in masks and standing behind bits of tape, as they're instructed to, on the floor, and going one way around the shop, as they're instructed to. So it's very disappointing that such a softening up job seems to have been done on what would otherwise be legions of real, authentic, masculine men. You know, I think the testosterone has been taken out of them and given to the ladies in many instances, and estrogen has been put into many of these so-called men by various means, through the food supply, through the water supply, through maybe chemtrails, through stuff that we're all breathing in, and it's been a job well done in emasculating and disempowering many men who should otherwise be taking much more of a stand in this whole thing. That's just how I feel about it. So it is very much down to us, the people, to take this situation into our own hands and turn it around, to resist the tyranny and to prevent the master plan of the architects, the New World Order proponents, from being able to succeed with their plan. Many people watching this video will know what that plan is, and it will be clear what we need to do to resist it. And we do need the numbers. We need more numbers on our side, so we do need to continue to step up the effort to win over the hearts, minds and souls of a great many more people and get them to come over on the side of truth, freedom, justice. There are some encouraging signs. The more the ridiculous, absurd, infantile rules from the government get foisted on us, the more it is going to become obvious, begrudgingly so, to many people, that there's far more to this than a bloody virus. I mean, I saw a headline this week suggesting that buildings where cases of COVID-19 have been identified could get bulldozed, destroyed. We've heard that people returning from holiday in France had to get back into the UK by 4 a.m. yesterday, or they would have to quarantine for 14 days. So where is common sense in all of this? Do people not look at a story like a building might have to be bulldozed and think, that's a little extreme, isn't it? We have buildings everywhere where people have had the flu. The flu comes along every year. It kills many more people than we're being told COVID has. But we don't destroy buildings where people have had the flu, because it's not very sensible to do that. Common sense is lacking. Also, it was deemed safe and acceptable for people to arrive back from France the day before the deadline, and they didn't have to quarantine and they could continue to go about their business in society. But after 4 a.m. on, what was it, the 15th, it's no longer safe. Now you have to quarantine for 14 days. Not 13. 13's not enough, because the virus could still be living in you on that 13th day. You have to leave it till the 14th day, and then it's gone, and then you can go back into society. Really? Grown adults are being asked to believe this horse shit. And evidently, grown adults are swallowing it. These things are so pathetic, they're so infantile, that a child of 5 would have trouble accepting it and would have some questions about it. And yet grown adults are just swallowing all this stuff. And I know it's partly down to fear. People are being kept in a state of fear. That's what all the masks are about. And it's partly down to the fact that people just don't want to rock the boat in their worldview, in their perception of this world. Because to accept that the government is lying to them, to accept that this is all about propaganda and control and surveillance and ulterior motive agendas, is to accept that the government is not your friend, that the mainstream media is lying to you daily, and that the world is not this nice, warm, comfortable, fluffy place that you thought it was. And that implies that you might personally have to take some action and some responsibility and stand up and play your part in putting this situation right. And that horrifies many people. And they will create all kinds of cognitive dissonance and embrace all kinds of denial to avoid having to face up to this fact. We've seen this so many times. But we're going to reach a point where people are no longer able to ignore it, because it's going to hit very close to home. If it's not happened already, everyone in this country and all others around the world are going to have been personally affected by this coronavirus scam in some very direct way. whether it's through losing their livelihood, losing a business they've worked all their lives to build up, whether it's through their kids being kept off school forcibly for several months, whether it's through being forced to adopt all these ridiculous behaviours, distancing, mask wearing, all this bollocks, isolation, quarantine, whether it's through not having seen relatives and loved ones, whether it's through having lost loved ones who have been put into these so-called care homes and they've died and they've not been allowed to see them or bury them. Everyone, to some extent, is going to have been affected in the long run in some way like this. And there's nothing like waking people up than it knocking on your door and coming very close to your home. And I've seen some encouraging signs in the mainstream press recently. The Telegraph particularly has been publishing some articles where, amazingly, their so-called journalists have been questioning aspects of the official narrative and asking why these things don't seem to make sense and why the government is flip-flopping and contradicting itself and why the bad science is being put out there. So that's caused many a discussion among normies, people who get their news from the mainstream media, and that's caused them to question and think about certain things, and that can only be a good thing. That has to continue. But it's going to hit very close to home. It certainly has in Melbourne and Auckland. I mean, how many people do we think there have had a very rude awakening to truth and are no longer existing in the bubble that they previously were of believing that the world is this nice place and governments care about us? It's certainly hit close to home there. And people are going to have to be forced to confront the truth of the matter. And it is right action. It is justified to force people to face up to these things, because them remaining in ignorance is affecting the rights and the freedoms of everyone else who doesn't wish to live under tyranny and does wish to live according to natural born rights and freedoms which are bestowed to us by creation. I did a talk at Truth Juice in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago now, which was videoed, but I've had a guy working on kind of recreating that entire presentation where he's spliced in the visuals, all the slides that I used, and he's put it together with a high quality version of the audio track to create a very impactful video. And I feel that this presentation, if shared widely, has the potential to wake up another several 100,000 people, normies, and get them over on the side of truth, to boost our numbers so that we can become an army of resistance against what's being done to us all. The reason I feel this video is going to be so impactful is because I present absolute, irrefutable, undeniable proof that the COVID-19 narrative was known to be coming years before it actually did. And this is in the form of both predictive programming style references in movies and TV shows and other popular culture vehicles, whereby, the controllers feel the need to announce what they're going to do in advance. It's part of their twisted perception of karma and how it all works. They've got it very, very wrong, by the way. And then there's documentation. There's official documents that were put out there through various organizations years in advance, talking about the exact scenario that we now find ourselves in and the exact measures that would be put into place to deal with it, which we're now all experiencing in our daily lives. Now, showing this presentation to anyone and them still believing at the end of it that the BBC Evening News and Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock are telling them the truth about what's really going on, there's really nothing you can say to these people. They are lost. They are lost on a spirit, soul level. There's nothing you can do for them. But I feel it's far more likely that anyone you show this presentation to is going to be jarred and shaken out of their mind control and their trauma, and they are going to be forced to face some uncomfortable truths. So when this video drops, which will be in a few days, I would like everyone watching this, everyone that I know, everyone in my social circle, everyone that follows me on social media, everyone that says they support my work and they want to help the cause, to share this presentation with somebody in your circle of family and friends who is not yet fully awake, who's not yet fully on board with the resistance. So this video needs to go out to normies, in other words, regular members of society. I don't want to see this shared among truthers. There's no point in sharing it among people that are already on board because you're preaching to the choir. We've got to get new people, new recruits, and I feel this video has a lot of potential to do so. It's not because it's me, it's not an ego thing, it's because I've just curated and brought together all this information into one place in a form which I feel just cannot be denied by any rational thinking person in control of their own consciousness. So let's get that done when this video drops. Many more events of the nature of the Birmingham one are on the way. If you go to the standupx.info website, it talks about some of the others. As I record this today, there's one going on in Manchester. On Saturday the 29th of August, next weekend, big event in Trafalgar Square, London, resulting in a march going through the streets of London. Wouldn't surprise me if it ends up at Broadcasting House, the BBC premises, because most demos in London do seem to end up there, with the BBC getting called out quite rightfully as paedophiles and paedophile protectors. So that's all good. Then on Sunday the 30th of August, it's the Stand Up X protest event in Bristol, in Castle Park, where I'll be speaking alongside many other people, and there are other protest events going on as well. And I feel for as long as the tyranny continues, for as long as these ridiculous impositions and outrageous affronts to our rights and freedoms get continued, then the resistance is going to grow. We're going to see more and more of these events. More and more people are going to come on board if they attempt this second wave bullshit and try and lock the country down again, particularly in the winter when we've got far less scope for things to do, and we're really going to feel it when it's dark at 4 p.m. and we're under house arrest. You know, it's just going to push and prod and provoke more and more people to step up and take action. And we have to do this. The future for ourselves and for our children is unthinkable if we allow this scam to continue. So we need the numbers, and we need to keep the activism stepped up regardless of what may be going on in America or anywhere else. We just got to act like none of that is happening and do what we always would have done anyway to stand up for our rights and freedoms. And I feel we can get the job done. I mean, you catch me on good days, you catch me on bad days. Today is a positive day, and I feel we can get the job done, and we're going to do this. Because I saw some evidence in Birmingham yesterday of a lot of committed people from all kinds of walks of life who are not having this, who have had enough, and they recognise that the power lies with us. As the chant went in the street yesterday, we are the 99%. Isn't it ridiculous when you look at the numbers, the proportion of the population that's being controlled and is having their rights and freedoms taken away by a tiny minority? All we need to do is stand up for ourselves and cease complying and send a very clear message that we're not having this. We respect our rights, we respect our freedom, and we're not going to allow it to be taken away from us on the basis of provable lies. Let's keep that whole process going. What else did I want to mention? Watch out for the interview with Dr. Adil, which I'll be posting to my YouTube, and that'll go on my Good Vibrations podcast, on my Spreaker, and all the other outlets. Please share that widely as well. A lot of people will take notice of a qualified medical professional calling foul on this whole thing in a way that they won't take notice of somebody like me. So let's get that interview shared. Many more on the way, many more events on the way. The whole thing is far from over, and I'm sure by the next time I deliver a video, there'll be a whole lot more to say about it. Thanks for watching.